Welcome back to Positive Solutions for Families. This is session 4, The Power of Routines. We are so glad you're with us again. I'm Karen Anthony from Oakland Schools.
And I'm Christine Hodge from the Great Start Collaborative and Oakland Schools. We're back. Okay, so we have some great new resources that we're going to share with you today, and I'm super excited about it. So we're really going to be focusing on routines today. One of Karen's and my favorite pieces of preventing challenging behavior is routines. We're both big fans, and so we have some resources to share. So we're excited about that. So we're going to be, again, through that apply it and try it, reflecting on what we did last week or last session, working on our affirmations and all those components that are required for a successful routine. And then prevention strategies. We're really excited about that because we can help. And then some tips or transitions. So
before we really dig into this session, I wanted to go back again to our last session and think about some of the activities that we left you with to try at home. One was to start observing your child when there was challenging behavior, to see if there were patterns that gave you clues about the why or the function of your child's behavior. And that was the one where we had many, many pages in your family handbook that really gave you an opportunity to look at those behaviors, because we know there's not just one. We know there's likely more than one. So that in the family handbook, they really gave you many, many pages that you can look at to really, describe that behavior, how long the behavior lasted, what happened before, and then what happened after, and how did it end. And I think that those are pieces that, again, as you start to maybe write these things down, you can start to figure out why we're in this space that we're at and what we can do to help prevent some of these challenges. And then our second activity was develop some rules for home. So hopefully you got a chance to do that. So, kind of looking at how we look at that behavior activity, we want to think about what are we doing to establish rules in your home. So hopefully you got a chance to actually create some of those in between sessions. That's an important piece.
yeah. And remember, too, you can always reach out to Karen or myself at any point. If you have questions, if you're a little bit confused, if the rules aren't working, if you aren't sure that your rule is what you would like it to be, and also if same thing with those ABC sheets, those many sheets that were given to you. If you have questions about that too, I always like to throw that out here right now. We can't be as interactive as we are in person when we meet with someone. So when we meet with groups, so it's nice to be able to remind you that we can be interactive however it works for you and for us right now. So.
And so one of the things, as we talk each week about these affirmations, I've been actually doing some self-reflection on that. And one of the things that I wanted to share was that when my kids were young and were going to elementary school, they kind of had this affirmation or mantra or whatever they called it in their school. And it was, do your best and do what's right. And so I would say that to my kids as they were walking out the door, to go to school. I'd say, okay, go do your best and do what's right. And of course, they give me the eye roll of mom. But even now as adults, I still say that to them. So the idea of these affirmations, or I like to call it a mantra, it really does stick if you find the right thing that works for you, but they can change all the time too. So making sure that you're giving yourself a pat on the back for what you accomplished this last week. I've been working on these pieces. It's not easy work. This is tough stuff. So hopefully you're giving yourself a pat on the back to say, good job.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I do that's a little bit silly around this affirmations kind of piece is, as I've shared before, I taught preschool for many years, and I have different notes and letters that families wrote me that just thank me for, helping their child with whatever it might be. And I've carried them with me from job to job. And I have just a little file at work that's just titled Smiles. And it's just things to remind me when I'm having a particularly bad day that I've done some good things that I'm proud of. And it's just nice to be able to look at those every once in a while. So that's not ones that I write for myself. It's even better if you write them for
Yeah,
yourself. But
right.
it is something to give yourself a little, a little pat on the back is never a
Yeah,
bad thing, right?
I love that. I love that.
Okay, so today we're going to dig into routines, what they are, and why they're so important. So, they are just predictable and naturally occurring activities in anyone's day. It says here in a child's day, but it's really in anyone's day. The routines that
Yes.
you have are the routines that you have. So, it can be uh, anything, caregiving, your daily tasks, meals, play, whatever it might be. When my kids were little, one of our routines was at the start of dinner every day, we would do highs and lows. So we would sit together and we'd talk what was your highest point of your day, what was your lowest point of your day. It was just something we shared on a daily basis. My highs of the day, I have two daughters. I was a single mom, and my highs of the day oftentimes were dinner when they were sitting there talking with me, and I couldn't. They couldn't get away. So that was always a good thing. Yeah. So here are some possible family routines that you, when you're thinking about what routines you have: getting dressed or undressed, brushing your teeth, getting ready for bed. And I want you just to take a minute to sit back and kind of think this through. What is a routine that works really well for you? What routine feels good? What is it about that routine that makes it work, do you think? Why is it a positive routine for you? And then dip into what is a routine that feels difficult for you and start to think about what might be making it challenging. Karen, do you have anything you want to add to that?
You just made me think of when you think of just those challenging times. How many times I've talked to parents who have said just getting out the door in the morning, how difficult it can be. So, if that's one of a family's struggles, definitely let's think about that. Like, how do we make that better? What are we going to be able to do to make this a better transition for you? So I love that idea of just thinking about what's working well, because sometimes you have some routines that are working well. Let's figure out why, and then let's kind of look at the things that aren't working well and figure out why, and then maybe we can build some better things in.
Agree. I mean, I would think that almost every family has something that works well. You just maybe aren't thinking about it. So it might
Right.
be dinner time for you. It might be getting up for you. It might be um, something is working well. Figure out why that one's working well, and maybe other ones that are challenging, why that might be the case. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very good. So when you think of what you need to have for a really good, successful routine, right? So you have to make sure that there's a very clear start and a very clear finish, right? So that you have this routine, and you know when you're beginning and you know when you're ending. And you really do need to teach your child the steps and expectations of the routine. So you're going to walk through this with your child. And it's going to take a while because kids don't pick up on, well, anybody doesn't pick up on something new very easily. So it's going to take some time for you to be able to kind of walk through what this routine is. And making sure that you're following it consistently. That's a really hard one for a lot of families, is that you feel like you do it once or twice and it's not working. So you want to just kind of like move on to the next thing. But it's really not. You want to really make sure you're following it consistently. And then, you can always make sure that you throw in visuals. I love visuals, especially with kids, because kids don't read. Little ones don't read yet. So the more that you can throw pictures and, you can draw a picture, you can actually take a picture with your phone, whatever works for you to have that visual there. And then absolutely everything that you're going to do with your child is you're going to make sure that when things are going well, that you're giving positive feedback and encouragement. Because kids who are encouraged and looked at with a sense of I guess, success in a sense, they need to hear that from their family. They need to hear that from their
Totally agree.
parents. Yeah. So here's an example of breaking down a routine into steps. So you can't just say to a child, get ready for bed. because that entails a lot of pieces, right? So when you think about what is getting ready for bed really mean, it's all of these different pieces. Now, this is a pretty elaborate visual, so I'm not necessarily saying that people need to do this, but this is just a good way to think it through, right? So you start with, you go to the toilet, and maybe you take a bath, then you put on your pajamas, and then you brush your hair, and then you brush your teeth. Look how many pieces are really part of that bedtime routine. It's more complicated, I think, than people realize. And so what we want to be able to do, we're going to do and apply it and try it with this, but I also want you to know that you have access to a family routine guide. So we're kind of giving you a little bit of a cheat sheet, right? So we're looking at our family routine guide, and what that will show you, it looks relative, Christine's pulling it up.
Yep.
So it looks relatively the same as your handbook, but this one's an actual routine guide.
Absolutely.
And again, this will kind of give you some thoughts and ideas. I love this, that when you pull it up on your screen, that we discovered that all you have to do is click on a section and it takes you right to it. The issue is that we're having a hard time with cleanup. Let's say cleanup is just a struggle for you. You can click on cleanup, and here are some of the things that you really want to think about as you're building a routine for how are you going to make cleaning up part of your daily routine.
Yeah, one of the things I'd love to point out here is that it's broken up into like 3 different sections for each topic. So those topics we were just on, getting dressed, clean up, whatever. It's broken up into preventing the behavior, what your response should be, and how you can help teach new skills that might change it. So that just gives you a little bit of a breakdown of what it's all about.
Love that.
Yeah.
It's there again. It's kind of like I said, it's a little bit of a cheat sheet because sometimes we get stuck, right? As a parent, you don't even know what the answer is. And this is not necessarily all the answers in this family routine guide, but it really gives you some good things to think about that maybe sometimes we didn't think about. And it talks a lot about prevention, which is probably more what we should be working on with a lot of pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think that prevention, at least in most of them that I've looked at, and I haven't examined everyone, so don't quote me if I'm wrong about this, but in from what I've looked at, preventing the behavior, that orange section is bigger in every single category that you're looking at. And so that if you can work on that prevention piece, you might not even have to get to the response piece because it might do what you want
away
it to
all
do.
on its own.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so this is just, so if cleanup is something that you're struggling with, you can try one of these things. Modify your expectations. Start with asking your child to clean up a limited number of items. So you put the books in the basket and I'll put the trucks in the bin, whatever it might be. And then you need to be very specific in your praise with them, if they're putting them away. So you need to be very specific in saying, "Ooh, you put 2 in." You kind of want to be
Yes.
involved in the process, right?
And I think that's the hard part for a lot of adults is that we want to stand back and tell kids what to do. But honestly, a big part of helping kids learn new skills is you modeling it as the adult, you showing them what it looks like, you walking them through it.
Yeah.
And that's part of the work, right? That's the initial work that you do. However, once you've done that work and you've built in that new skill, you can start to back off as the adult and just let the kids fill in. So again, the initial pieces are hard, but it certainly is something, again, you practice.
Yeah. Do you want me to go anywhere else in here, Karen? Do you want me to dig in more or do you want to go back?
I think if we go back to slide 10, because then this, again, kind of goes back to explaining what you were just saying. It's the idea of, what are we going to do to prevent the challenging behavior? So thinking about that. How are we going to respond? And then what new skill am I going to teach? So that's the part where you really have to be the mentor for your child. You have to show them what this looks like. This is what cleaning up looks like. It's putting the basket, the books in the basket. I'll help you. You do two of the books and I'll do, like you said, and I'll do the trucks. So it's kind of walking your child through that. But we eventually, again, kids will pick up on this and they'll be able to, back up a little bit as the adult. But I really like this family routine guide. I think it's a really good way if you're stuck in figuring out what to do with your child. Take a look and see if one of the concepts in here is something you want to work on.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's good. Okay, so another kind of prevention strategy that we want to throw out there is visual supports. So visual supports is anything that your child can look at instead of hearing you say it. They can look at something that can be a reminder of. So if you take a peek at some of these visual supports that are here, there are some that can be photographs. It can be something that's drawn. It can be words. Even if your child isn't fully reading yet, if there are common words that they might know. I know in the classroom, I have used a stop sign before, like just a clip art picture of a stop sign that I could, just kind of hold out and just kind of give a visual clue to a child that might be, I want to say, I'm not touching you, that little finger that they
Yes.
put out, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
A child that might be doing that just to get some attention from the child next to them, you can just give them a little stop sign to remind them that, we want to keep our hands on our own bodies, safe hands. So there can be a lot of different things that you can use. And when you're using visual supports with your child, you want to just really kind of get close to them and just show them that piece. So if it's a picture on your phone that you want them to walk, you might have a photo of them walking. And if they start to run away from you at the mall or wherever, you don't even have to say anything. You can just remember, walk.
Show it to them. Yep, yep. And kids are visual, right? I mean, we want to get the message to them in many ways. We're going to use it. We're going to say it verbally, but we're also going to show a visual of it. And I love these, like you said, it's you can have the words on there too because kids are going to be learning new words. But recognizing that most little kids aren't really readers.
Hmm.
They really need picture. Yeah.
Yeah, they need something that's going to kind of clue them in. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so another kind of prevention technique you can use is using a scripted story. So a scripted story it doesn't need to be something, um, a major undertaking to create something. It can be if you want to and use some paper and put photos on it, and it can be that piece, but it also can be something as simple as setting up kind of a short and descriptive idea for what's going to be happening next. So, um, when you do a scripted story, you want it written in the first person. So, I will go to grandma's. I will, um, walk in the house and say hello to everyone. So I'm speaking about this one in particular because my youngest daughter has a lot of anxiety and always did. And I always had to prepare her for who was going to be at an event, who was going. So it might not be something that is even a major thing that you feel like you need a script. You just want to prepare them. So my family will do this. This is what will happen next. I feel like it's something that you can do kind of regularly. That's something that I would do in particular when we were visiting with others, whether it was families or friends. But you can do this with any story with any routine that you regularly do. So if bath time is something that you want to work on, you explain every step to that bath time process. Mom turns the water on. We test the water to see if it's comfortable, right? I take off my clothes and get in the tub. When Karen broke down those steps a little earlier, it is really something that you need to break it down and be
Yes.
exact. Do you want to add anything
And
to this, Karen?
that, yeah, I mean, kids really need those small steps in between. I see that in classrooms, and I think it's the same thing when you're at home, that kids need things broken down into pieces. So to say to a child, get ready to go to school, that's so big. So what are all those steps in between of what do I need to do to get ready to go to school? So it's the idea that if you break it down, and you can use that as a scripted story, you can actually write a story about when I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth and I put my clothes on and I go down to have breakfast and then I get my backpack and, and I get my shoes on and then we get in the car. So it's an entire story of what's happening. And kids, the more they read the story and go over it, they're more likely to actually follow those routines because it's now built in.
Yeah. It's more likely. And you said at the beginning of that kids need this. And that is true, but not every child needs this. So if this is your second or third child and you're like, I don't know what's going on and why we're struggling so much, because this child might need more of a script to be able to do. And it means nothing for their future. It means it's just some people need more teaching in this area and some do not. The good news is all kids can benefit from stuff like this. All routines can be
Absolutely.
made
Yeah.
easier if you set this up, right?
Yep.
Okay. So another great way to help routines go smoothly is offering a choice. My favorite. You always want to offer choices in the matter. So do you want to use um, you know, do you want to use, if you have two sinks in your bathroom, do you want to use this sink to brush your teeth or this sink to brush your teeth? It's not it's something that you can actually use. You don't want to give a choice of 1,000 things. You don't want to say, what do you want to wear to school today? You want to say, do you want to wear this outfit to school today or this outfit or these pants or these pants? You want to kind of limit it, especially with a younger child. You want to only give them 2 or 3 choices at the most. For an older child, um, my oldest daughter was quite spirited and she liked lots of choices. So I would set up her drawers where she had one drawer that was tops and one drawer that was bottoms, and I would change them seasonally. And I would say, you need to
Yeah.
pick one item from the top drawer and one item from the bottom drawer because she really needed a lot of choices. And that way, she wasn't wearing a bathing suit to school, in the middle of winter. So you kind of need to set them up for success.
Yes.
Um, yes. So choices are huge. Offer choices when you can. Um,
And I like that this really gives a good examples of what some of that might look like for families, because the pieces that they have here really are really typical, right? These are typical. Everybody does these pieces, and so you can give choices.
yeah, absolutely. So these are just some options that you can do for mealtime, for riding in the car. Which toy do you want to bring for bath time? Which pajamas do you want to wear afterwards? Which washcloth do we want to use? Which toy? They can be super simple. It doesn't have to be a huge a huge undertaking for you. There are simple ways that you can make this happen,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. So know that when you're offering choices to children, though, that you can offer them. There's pretty much a choice in anything that you do, right? I feel like with no matter what we're doing, there's always a choice. So when I think of this, you really want to think about the times when you're going to anticipate the most challenging behavior. So thinking about when you're struggling, and then being able to think about how do I offer a choice in this situation. And again, in most situations, there is opportunity for choice. So it's interesting because one of the things that I always give as an example is that do you want to go to bed now or do you want to go to bed in 5 minutes? Because honestly, what's the difference between now and 5 minutes from the adult standpoint? But for a child, who will likely say, I want to go in 5 minutes. It's still a choice, right? That you're still offering a choice. You're going to bed. It doesn't matter. That's not an option. You're going to go to bed, but do you want to go now or do you want to go in 5 minutes? So there's always a couple of choices that you can give to children. Young children, very young children, you probably don't want to do more than two choices. Do you want the red cup or the blue cup? But as kids get older, you might be able to add in more, right? So I'm thinking like for a 2-year-old, I want to offer the red cup or a blue cup. For a 4-year-old, you might have many more choices. So it just kind of depends on your child's age as well. As they get older, you might want to offer more. Be sure that when you're offering choices that you're doing things that are reasonable, that a child can do either one, right? And then determining how they'll be offered. Are you going to use pictures? Are you going to just verbally ask them? Often with my granddaughter, I'll hold up the red and the blue cup and I'll say, which one do you want? Do you want the red cup or the blue cup? And again, she's 2, so she might pick one, right? But I usually have them right in front of her just to make it easier on her and honestly easier on me. And when she picks it, that's the one she gets and the other one goes back in the cupboard. So, immediately, it's an immediate reward to her. You picked one and here it is, which I think is really important too, because if you're offering something and it's not going to happen until tomorrow or later on tonight, sometimes it's just too long of a stretch for kids. They won't remember. So also know that it's really important to know your child really well. And I find that when I do this with classroom teachers, this works out really well. And it certainly can be something you can do in your home. I always try to think of like those kids, what do they really like to do? What is their thing? What is their the thing that really draws them in? So oftentimes, believe it or not, I see kids that really like a superhero character. Like I'm really into Spider-Man. So if you know that your child is really into Spider-Man, you can use that to your advantage of how you allow your child to have some of these preferences or things that they might like. So think about this. You got to think about what is the things. Is there a person that your child really enjoys, likes? Is there a certain object? Is there like a toy or something that they really are into? Is there a specific location that they're drawn to? And then what are those activities that they really like? So you have to know your kid pretty well, right? So things like, even when we talk about the location, I'm talking about things like, do you want to read your story on the couch or do you want to read your story in your bed, snuggled up in your bed? So you can give options, right? So I think of this little kid that I worked with several years ago who was really into Spider-Man. It was amazing how that if you could include Spider-Man somehow in an activity, he was right there. That was his thing. So it's the idea of how do we figure this out? So say your kid really is into Spider-Man. So in the morning, you can say to them, okay, Spider-Man, it's time to get up. Time to get up in the morning. Spider-Man needs to put his clothes on first thing in the morning. So you can really work with your child and use that preference to your advantage and to help them kind of make their way through the routine and in a positive way.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, Christine?
No, I don't think so. I think what you said makes complete sense is that, you want to have preference. If somebody likes it more, they're going to remember it more. They're going to understand it better. They're going to follow it a little bit more.
So also keep in mind that consistency is probably your best friend. So I really want you to think about that. The thing is that oftentimes things do change, right? There are times when, unforeseen things happen. So as much as possible, though, if we can keep routines the same and consistent, COVID has not helped with that. And certainly there are going to be days where things happen that we have no control over. However, for the most part, we can keep control. So being consistent within routines helps children learn to follow the steps of the routine, right? So if you use a visual, you can actually show children, and I've done this in classrooms where, we have our daily routine, and as we complete a task, we take that little visual off the wall and we put it in an envelope to say, we're done with that part.
Yeah.
So as you move your way through, you can kind of see how you've accomplished things during the day. And that's a really great way to show visually a child. But as much as you possibly can, keep those things in the same order, all the better. However, look, with a schedule like this where it might be Velcro, you can move things around a little bit to say, oh, look, it's different today. And, again, different for what reason, depending on what's happening. But I do think that it's the more you can use these visuals and keep your routine the same, all the better.
Yeah, it's that consistent but flexible piece. So
Yes.
when I used to have visual schedules in my classroom, I would, if it started to say thunder and lightning, we could no longer go outside, which was scheduled for the day. So I would sometimes have to change my schedule. You need to be consistent but flexible, I think is the best way to describe it. And it's not always easy.
No, it's not easy.
Yeah. So another piece we want to talk about is transitions. Transition is moving from one activity to another, or one event to another. Or it's that actual switching up. And they can be very tricky for some children. Some children just go with the flow. They just, okay, this is what we're doing next. Other children really need some time to kind of switch their minds over. So these are just some strategies that might help if transitions are tricky for your child. So in other words, if transition from playtime to nap time is a struggle, you want to give some of these strategies. You might want to use a timer that you can set up. You might want to give some type of warning verbally or visually. You might want to use an object. So it's time for nap. I'm going to go get Rabbit and hand him to you. You can play with Rabbit for the last 2 minutes, and then it's going to be time for whatever it might be. I'm a big fan of singing a song. You can sing a song to do whatever you might want to transition to. So there's a lot of different choices that you can use there. And it really can help. If transitions are tricky, think about those moments in between one activity to another. And if that's always an issue for your family, you might need one of these transition strategies. So these are just some examples of timers that you can use. And it doesn't have to be anything this fancy. But if you can use a sand timer that you can get that's 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever you want it to be, it's a very visual sign for them to see. Some kids even love those timers with the sand in them. Some timers you can flip over that are, I don't know if you've seen them, but they have like the lava stuff in them that slows through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those, it doesn't have to be anything formal. If that's about 2 or 3 minutes that it takes to do that, and that's the good amount of time that you want to do, that can be your timer. There doesn't have to be, there's no law saying it has to be 5 minutes is the right amount of transition of time for them to see. It just is what it is, right?
Right. And although, again, like you said, visually, some kids need to actually see the timer kind of going down, and for us as adults, some of us are the same way too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That doesn't go.
And if you don't have any of these, you can always use your phone or your microwave clock. Most of us have a phone or a microwave where you can see that. And your microwave clock, a child can see the numbers going down. As the numbers move, they know it's getting closer. They might not even know that the numbers are going down, but they know what's happening. So they can see it. Just something visual.
Getting closer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can also look at other kinds of transition like cues that we give kids. And again, these are all visuals. And I want you to think about using visuals because I just had found that children respond to this when they can actually see what you're talking about. So just like visual support routines, visual can also help with transitions, right? So if we look back and we see in that visual supports for routines, transitions, pieces, You can see that there are some visual cue cards that we reviewed that can help us make transitions easier. So these are some that you can see here. And, I just want to give an example. So if a child is playing with Legos and it's time for bath, you can show your child the visual for bath time, right? And say, hey, after we're done cleaning up the Legos, it's time for bath. And so you can show them the actual card. So you can tell them 5 more minutes for Legos, then it's time for bath. So it really does make transitions a little easier. And again, it's some work on your part. It's work to kind of put these pieces together. But once you build these routines in, the rest of everything else starts to become so much easier for you. So I would say, take a look at some of these, see if they really are helpful or if this really meets your needs. But certainly you can go online and get a visual for anything and use your camera on your phone, just like we were talking earlier. The more that you have that's actually of your life, all the better. And then another option, I like using first then really often. I use this with children in classrooms. I certainly used it with my own children. And then again, now I'm using it with my granddaughter as she's 2 and wants to pull out everything on the shelves. And I have to remind her, first we clean this one up, then you can get the next one out. So she understands that now. She will say to me, pick up, and we both will pick up together. So thinking about that for some families it might be first we brush our teeth, then we read our books. First we clean up toys, then we play outside, right? So kids start to build in this idea that first we do something and then we do the next thing. Does that make sense, Christine? I mean, I feel like that's a kind of a given, but
Yeah, I think it does make sense. And I'm a big fan of first then kind of as using, um, using whatever it might be. You can even be food. First we eat
yeah,
broccoli, then we eat a French fry. It can be something as
yeah.
simple as that.
We want to encourage. So I think it is individualist, for that family, for that child, what they need, definitely.
Yeah. So I want to talk for a second about what to do when routines go well. So especially something that you've been struggling with, if you set up a routine and you teach it to your child and then it goes well, it's kind of a big deal. When they do that, that's like a big deal, especially if it's been something of struggle. So celebrate it, acknowledge it, let your child know, I noticed you sat down when I said it was time to eat, and then you ate your dinner, and then you took your plate up. You did all the pieces that we talked about. I noticed. And this is something that I think some of us are very good at, but some of us struggle with that a little bit. I know for myself personally, it was kind of sometimes hard for me to celebrate those small moments because to us they're small, but to your child they're not. It's a big deal.
Right.
So, and it
Yeah.
could be a big deal for you if you can prevent some of those, other big blowups from happening, right?
And that's the thing is that kids need that positive feedback from their adult, from the closest people to them, from their parents, from their immediate caregivers. Because when you get that positive feedback, that's going to build their self-esteem. That's going to build who they are, and that's what you really are looking for.
Yeah, yeah. And it might take a while to get to the point where you can celebrate it. So you can celebrate small pieces of it when you can, so that maybe you can grow to those big full steps of a routine.
Yeah.
So you just want to make sure that you're specific in your praise. You don't just want to say good job. You want to say good job, getting your PJs on when I asked you to, getting in bed, and picking out your story. Those are 3 things that you did to get ready for bed today, right? So,
Yeah. I need that feedback.
yep,
All right, so here's the time when we're going to give you your apply it and try it homework between now and our next session.
gotcha.
So So these are important pieces I want you to think about that we're gonna go back and kind of look at where we were. Definitely make sure that you're writing down your affirmations, hugely important. When we think about this apply it, try it piece here, we want to think about routines again. We're going back and we're thinking about what are those routines that you want to like focus in on. So pick one or two that are really important to you. Write down that routine is, and then write down each individual step in that routine and how you're going to give some kind of a visual cue. So pick something, again, it might be bath time, it might be, getting out the door, whatever it is that you're challenged with, use this as an opportunity to say, all right, we're going to really focus on that. And then activity 3 is kind of that whole idea of strategies to try. So we're going to talk about work on routines. What are those routines that are really important to you? What are the strategies that you're going to try? And then again, I really feel like this is your space of being able to like thumb through that family routine guide and get some good ideas from there if you can't think of them on your own. That family routine guide can be a really good place for a lot of families to learn.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, so these are the pieces, again, thinking about finding one routine or transition and using visuals and try at least 3 strategies. This is work. This is a little bit of work.
It is. And it should be a routine or a transition that you struggle with, but it might not be the hugest one if you don't want to tackle that one right now. If there's a smaller one, you might want to start smaller. But if you want to tackle the big one, that's great.
You're right. If this is new to you and your child, you might want to start smaller.
Absolutely. Remember, we're always here. Just check on the website. We thank you once again for joining us. So good luck. I hope things are going well, and we want to hear from you. Let us know.
We do. We do.
Thanks.